same as Cape Coral and other parts that are ahead of the hurricane, where the water is low. It's being sucked out of the river right now.
It almost looks like the river has a beach, which you wouldn't ordinarily see.
Exactly, but as the day goes on and as the hurricane passes this area, the opposite will occur and the water will rise.
Let's go to Rotunda, I believe, next. This is Rotunda Boulevard East, so we're a little further north now. So the wind is definitely starting to pick up, even in Charlotte County, in that part of the area. Clearly not as much as we saw in Naples a couple of minutes ago, but as Jim said, you would expect that based on where the hurricane is. But clearly, you see the palm trees, and you can see the puddling starting on the roads there.
Let's move now to Cemetery Road and Higgins in Fort Myers. There we are looking from a structure out to the wind and the trees blowing around there. No waterway right there, so we're just seeing rain, heavy rain in that area and heavy winds at this hour.
Let's go to the Northwest Cape right now. Residential neighborhood in the Northwest Cape. Winds are certainly picking up there, and no water in sight, at least that I can see, but definitely the winds picking up. And this is not too far from where Brooke was just talking to us, so we would expect to see the winds picking up there.
Let's move to some damage that is starting to come in Southwest Florida, and there you see a palm tree from earlier today. This was taken on 6th Avenue North in Naples, and Michelle just took us down Gulf Shore, not far from this area, and there's a lot of saturated ground there and wind gusts that are blowing down trees already. So you can imagine this will get worse as we get into more hurricane force winds and gusts, and a lot of trees will probably knock down, as well as some power poles and power lines. And so if you need to be aware of that, because the emergency officials will keep you off the roads because of things like this until they have everything clear and they know that it's safe for people to be back in these neighborhoods.
Let's check out Fort Myers Beach. We're going to be wanting to check the coastal areas as much as possible. These are the trees over Fort Myers Beach, but you can certainly see them blowing in the wind, starting to blow heavily, and we don't yet know a whole lot about haven't heard a whole lot about any water rising on the beach or anything, or being sucked off.
And the wind is whipping there in Clearwater, Florida. You heard our Tom Sater, our meteorologist, say winds of up 78 miles an hour, close to 80 miles an hour. And this is just the start for them. We're just on the phone with the mayor of Tampa, Florida, Bob Buckhorn, and he says they're ready to assess the damage and also still ready for some major damage that could happen as these winds come through. Let's get to...
Yeah, we're not far from Clearwater. That's just to the west of us. The whole Bay Area is Clearwater, St. Petersburg, Tampa. So what Ryan Young is seeing is a lot of what we have been seeing. We're somewhat more protected. We sort of planned this location because there's a big Sheraton hotel that we're actually staying in that's blocking some of that wind. So for us, the wind is a little bit less than it is for Ryan, but it is the water, it's the wind. You step out here for just a second, you get drenched, obviously. But I think a lot of people in Tampa, and I just heard your interview with the mayor, and I think a lot of people are waiting for that 11 o'clock advisory that we're going to be bringing them, because I think that's going to give a sense of exactly what side of the storm talking about a hurricane like this, but there's been so much question about storm surge. Yesterday we're thinking 5 to 8 feet in Sarasota. They downgraded that to 1 to 3 feet over the next several hours. We won't know about the storm surge until the early morning hours here, and that's something I know the mayor is very, very concerned about because he's been raising red flags about this. Frankly, as you know, Don, last year he gave interviews at City Hall saying, look, if a Cat 3 storm made a direct hit on Tampa, City Hall, the downtown would be 15 feet underwater. This is a city that fills up or that floods in certain areas if there's a heavy rainfall. So a Cat 3 storm, which is what was anticipated yesterday, could have been devastating just in terms of the surge. So I think people are really waiting for that 11 o'clock advisory, and they'll get a better sense then of what lies ahead in the next couple hours.
Yeah, and if you look at it, I mean, it's clear because you're standing there on a body of water, but then Clearwater has this body of water on one side and then the ocean on the other side. So I'm sure that it's a clear concern. Exactly where are you, Anderson? Because I see the water behind you, and can that surge get up high enough to get up there where you are? I can't tell from your shot here.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll tell you. I mean, University of Tampa is just over in that direction. We're by the Kennedy Boulevard Bridge, which is about 500 feet or so away. There's actually WFLA Channel 8 is across the Hillsborough River. There's the Hillsborough River, which, during the spring, a lot of college crews come from all around the country to row on this river to practice during their spring training. Down there's a hospital. Clearwater is off in that direction to the west. The Hillsborough River, which is much lower now over the last 10 or 12 hours, probably I'm just guesstimating about 10 feet lower as that water's been sucked out. The Hillsborough River, it drains into Hillsborough Bay. That goes into Tampa Bay. And as a lot of people have been saying, Tampa Bay, with that storm surge, it will act as a funnel. And if we were on the bad side of the storm, as the storm is moving counterclockwise, it sucks that water, as we're seeing and as we've been seeing. And then as the storm would come back around, all that water would be pushed back up through Tampa Bay, up through Hillsborough Bay, and up through the Hillsborough River. We're about 20 feet or so off the water. We're on the Riverwalk, which is a developed area they put along here. It's a lovely place along the water that people come and walk their dogs. People come and stroll around. So most of the hotels here are even higher off the water than that. So it would have had to have been a really big storm surge with waves on top of that to affect some of the areas around the Riverwalk, or to have covered this Riverwalk. But there's so many low-lying areas around Tampa Bay that people have built essentially houses on a slab, very just pressed to the ground without any kind of basement, not elevated at all. And that would be the main concern for flooding in a lot of some of these low-lying neighborhoods throughout Tampa.
Yeah. Hey, Anderson, stand by. I just want to tell our viewers what's going on the other screen on the other side. That's Clearwater, Florida, and you can see the winds. It's not far from where Anderson is, and that's our Ryan Young. Obviously, in the parking lot there, it's chasing some debris. Some debris is falling. Anderson on the right side of your screen in Tampa, Florida, and we're discussing the storm surge. And Anderson, you heard my interview earlier with the mayor. At this point, though, he believes because of the path of the storm and that it's been downgraded a bit, he believes he thinks they're going to get some damage, but he believes they still dodged a major bullet at something that could have been much worse.
I think that's true. Don, as you know, you love New Orleans and know it better than anybody. Folks in New Orleans thought they dodged a bullet after Katrina passed, and then they woke up, in the lower ninth with water flooding through. So, I don't want to be somebody on the record saying any place has dodged a bullet until this thing is passed, until this thing is done. But certainly in terms of where we have seen this storm heading, this hurricane heading over the last several hours, it is better news for Tampa than it might have been. Had this storm been to the west of Tampa, and Tampa been in the northeast quadrant, the upper right quadrant of this hurricane that you hear so much about, that would have been the worst case scenario for Tampa. And at a time yesterday, it looked like that might take place. So the worst case scenario has not taken place for Tampa, and everything we've heard over the last couple hours from Tom Sater about sort of the dissipation of the storm, the disorganization of it, and some of the questions about the storm, and also what Tom Sater said was kind of an easterly push on this storm. All of that is better news for Tampa than it might otherwise have been. It might be worse news for people more in the direction of Orlando. But certainly for the worst that could have hit Tampa, the worst has not come to pass as of yet. A Category 3 storm hitting Tampa would have been completely unprecedented. You'd have to go back to 1921 when it decimated this area. Thankfully, at that point, it wasn't a big population center as it is now with millions of people. There was only one fatality in 1921, but the area itself, the structures, such as they were really, really badly damaged. But there are a lot of people, including the mayor, who've been raising red flags about what a major storm with a direct hit on Tampa would do. They faced this back in the Hurricane Charlie in 2004. There they dodged a bullet. Not unfortunately for the people of Punta Gorda, the storm tracked at the last minute, turned and hit Punta Gorda and decimated that town. It was supposed to hit Tampa. We were here in Tampa waiting for that, and ended up driving to Punta Gorda the next day, and the devastation was just extraordinarily horrific to see. But certainly
know exactly where Anderson's standing. We were at that hotel a little earlier today. What is just a remarkable difference in terms of just the power of the wind. You know, you talk about the wind gust. I know you guys saw me on camera. I was kind of scrambling around at one point. I was trying to run after this piece of plaster that came off another roof. And this is kind of what we're seeing at this point. Little bits of plaster kind of flying by our live shot at this juncture. The wind, I say this every time we're on, but it seems like it's picking up again. But it's starting and stopping. So what you get is this powerful gust, and you get a few.
はい、お待たせしました。特製のおつけ麺です。はい、お待たせしました。はい、ありがとう。
And even though we've watched a couple signs look like they were going to buckle and give away, they haven't as of yet. But it's really remarkable the difference between just a few miles when you think about what's going on in Tampa and what they were expecting and then what we have in Clearwater. I can only imagine what some of the homes that are close to the inlets are dealing with right now, because one of the beautiful things about Florida is you can live in a neighborhood where you're split by water in between neighborhoods, and there's small bodies of water that lead out to the bay, so it's a little different.
Yeah.
But we knew that could be some of the areas where there had some of the worst flooding. And we were told that they were expecting some 5 to 8 feet there. So we're going to hopefully check back on them at some point later on.
Hey, Ryan.
The story right now is just the constant pounding of wind and rain. Yes,
Listen,
sir.
I just want to show you to your right. When you were talking, your photographer turned off to the right, and you could see, I mean, just how strong that wind is. And looking at the stoplights there, just swinging in the wind and being blown around.
Yeah.
It's right off to your right. Other right.
Let's come this direction. You can.
Yeah, there you go.
Look above us as well. They want to show the spotlights up here. You get a sense of just what this looks like when you look at those spotlights. We've been watching those as well. Obviously, nobody wanted to park their car next to that spotlight just in case they fell. But amazingly, everything is standing up at this point, and that is the good news, including us.
Ryan, we appreciate your coverage. I really want you to be careful and watch out for projectiles, okay? And we're going to get back to you. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll get back to our Ryan Young, who's out there doing a human's job covering this storm from Clearwater, Florida. And when we come back, much more on our breaking news tonight. Damaging winds and torrential rains as Hurricane Irma moves north,
this is our
spreading
winds
fears
meter.
of...
It's actually Chief Meteorologist Jim Farrell's winds meter, and I'm going to show you those wind conditions as soon as we get one of those big gusts of wind. Again, these are just the beginning wind conditions we're going to start to feel here in Fort Myers. So once one of those wind conditions does come, I'm going to put this up to the camera so you can see what we're tracking. But first, I want to show you these conditions over here. Again, this is a body of water that you all, if you live in the area, know as Billy's Creek. And the reason I want to show you this is because we're going to be keeping a close eye on it throughout our coverage of Irma. And many of you may remember from Hurricane Donna, we were told that you were able to walk across it, and let me show you why. That's because as Hurricane Irma comes in, what it's going to do is pull all of this water north, and you can see the direction that it'll go. It's going to go towards the river. And so that's why back around Hurricane Donna, people tell us that Billy's Creek, they were actually able to walk over it. So a pretty crazy sight. Think about the fact that this water is going to go down just over the next couple of days as Irma makes its way into Fort Myers. And, other conditions, again, not too terribly bad yet here in Fort Myers. We're seeing minor flooding in the parking lot. If I had to park my car over there today, wouldn't want to pick one of those spots on the right there because already collecting lots of water there. Sam, can we get a zoom in on all of the trees back there? That way we can give people an idea of what that wind is really doing. So we see trees, and here's one of those gusts of wind. I just saw my photographer actually had to get his footing right because
we're feeling those gusts starting to move in. Sam, can we get a close-up over here if you're able to turn around safely and show so you can see those wind speeds starting to pick up again? These are just gusts of winds, so not clocking in terribly high right now on our winds meter. Again, Jim Farrell's winds meter right here, not terribly high. That's just a gust of wind. So definitely more to come as we see Hurricane Irma making its way, making its presence more known here in Fort Myers, but just wind gusts that we're dealing with right now. Of course, we will keep an eye on this area as well as the rest of Southwest Florida for you out here in the field. In Lee County, Jessica Alpern, Wink News. Now. All right.
Flow in the onshore.
Number of trees down there. Remember, once the storm, it's been blowing in one direction, the winds have for so long, then the winds shift, and so often trees that were blown in one direction end up blowing over back in the other, and that's what's happening there. Just in from the National Weather Service, breaking from the National Weather Service in Miami, they just recorded a, you can kill the audio from SVN, we just recorded a 130-mile-an-hour gust in Marco Island, Florida. That is the highest gust to be recorded in this storm, and that happened as that eye wall was coming right over Marco Island. Official from the National Weather Service, 130-mile-an-hour wind gust at Marco Island. Now, that is not the maximum sustained winds. Maximum sustained winds are now at 120 miles an hour. But 130 would be Category 4 level winds. Category 4 level winds hitting Marco Island just in.
Right now we're feeling pretty significant wind gusts here in Punta Gorda. This is really the strongest that we felt. I'm standing right next to our hotel, so we're still guarded a little bit from most of the wind, but I got my hands on a anemometer so we can see kind of what the wind speeds we're dealing with here. And I'm getting a reading of right around 40 mile per hour winds here in Punta Gorda. So we're probably on the western side of that outer wall of the Hurricane Irma, feeling a little bit heavier winds than we were before, but this is probably the worst that we're going to see here in Punta Gorda. Reporting in Punta Gorda, Morgan Francis, Wink News now.
All right, thank you very much, Morgan. We have some pictures now from Fort Myers Estates.
Live pictures now, Tampa, Florida, and you can see just how strong those winds are. Look at those stoplights really swinging there, some of them dangling by a rope of a power cord there. That's in Tampa, Florida again, and Tampa, Florida is about to get the brunt of it. The worst of it still has not come through Tampa, Florida. Clearwater, Florida, you could see our Ryan Young was out there getting whipped about in the wind and the rain as well. It's hitting the Tampa area hard right now as it passes through Florida. And before Tampa, Naples was battered with even stronger winds when Irma passed through that city. I want to go to Naples now. The mayor, Bill Barnett, joins us. He joins us via telephone. Mayor, thank you so much. We appreciate it. You have a sense of the amount of damage Naples has sustained?
I can't, thank you, first of all, for having me on. We can't tell yet, but we have a, you know, when you were talking about dodging bullets, Anderson was talking about dodging bullets, and storm surge, you know, it was forecast for 12 to 15 feet here in Naples, which would have been catastrophic. We had minimal because the back of that storm broke up. So we've got some flooding. Our first responders just went out about 2 hours ago. The police are out and just doing an initial assessment, and then tomorrow morning at sunrise, we'll have a full crew out to assess the damage. We know that there's flooding. We know there's a tremendous amount of trees down. I don't know how many power lines are down, but nobody in Naples has power. The whole city is out, and I understand that 75% of Collier County is out, and she was a beast. I was, as Anderson knows, because he was here, we talked about Charlie, but Wilma, I thought Wilma was bad, but Wilma paled in comparison with Irma.
Oh, my goodness. So you said that all of 75% of the electricity is out there?
75% is out in Collier County, and the city of Naples has zero.
Zero. My goodness. Yeah. So give me your biggest concern, Mayor. Is it are you worried about surge? Are you worried about wind? What are you concerned about?
You know, we're still having the remnants, or the wind is still blowing down here, but not like it was. But biggest concern is seeing exactly what the amount of damage is. that this storm did, and you know, I'm optimistic, but I think that there's going to be a lot of repair and a lot of rebuilding to do, and again, not so much on the structural, but certainly the areas that are flooded, and the whole thing is a concern. If you had asked me earlier today, while she was coming through here, I, of course, would have agreed with the mayor of Tampa and other mayors that I've talked to and had communications with along the East Coast, along the coast, would have been that storm surge, because, as I say, that would have just done us away. I mean, really.
Yeah. Mayor Bill Barnett of Naples, thank you, sir. We appreciate you joining us here on CNN.
My pleasure. Take care. Bye.
This is CNN Breaking News.
It is breaking news at the top of the hour. Hurricane Irma tearing north through Florida, leaving a path of destruction in its wake. We've got our correspondents out reporting. Anderson is in Tampa. Ryan Young is nearby in Clearwater. Tom Sater in the CNN Weather Center. We want to get right to Tom because, Tom, that new forecast comes out at the top of the hour. Do you have it? What does it say?
Yeah, we sure do, Don. In fact, the men and women of the National Hurricane Center, the best in the world, have really been actually in front of the schedule, and so we're grateful for that. Here's what we know. It's still a Category 2. Notice the brighter colors fanning out on both coasts, so you would expect some weakening. It has dropped 5 miles per hour now. It's down to 100 mile per hour sustained winds. Still have gusts at 120. That's near the core in the center. But notice all the loss of color around the core. We're seeing the pressure rise, which showing signs of weakening. However, don't let this fool you, because we still have miles. Now, earlier in Tampa, we had a gust of about 78 miles per hour when Anderson was there. I know he's going to be with us now, just had a gust of 60, but I think it's still approaching, obviously, Tampa area, and so therefore we can expect some of those stronger gusts. Sebring getting about 72. We do have a slight difference, as expected, in the shift to the east, because we had a little wobble in the eye. Instead of it making its way directly over Tampa and Big Bend, is shifted just a little bit to the east. However, it is going to get that northwesterly component in its movement back in the overnight period. On a broader scale, we'll watch it still staying to the southwest of Atlanta, moving more toward Birmingham, toward Memphis. But when it makes its way into the southeastern U.S., we should undergo some shear. Let's break this down a little closer for you, because the track does mean everything. Since we have a compact storm, still Category 2, which, by the way, if it just drops 5 miles per hour, it'll be a Category 1. But let's not, we're splitting hairs at that point. We're still going to have power outages with this. We're still going to have trees down. And so the roads and arteries are going to be blocked, and we need to get those cleared first to get the power restored. So as the system moves up, stronger winds in Lakeland, of course, toward Inverness. We're looking this right over Chiefland. Gainesville will be, of course, on the edge of this cone of uncertainty, but still that's in that front right quadrant. We're watching that as it makes its way toward Lake City. Valdosta will get in on it as well. Again, toward Columbus, some of the stronger winds. But by this period, even though it can still down winds down with, gusts over 50 miles per hour, we're still looking at sustained winds that are going to keep this system together enough to be a real pain. Rainfall amounts too. So again, it's not over with when it gets into areas of Georgia and Alabama. In fact, Governor Nathan Deal declared state of emergency for 159 counties in Georgia. A couple things we want to point out. We're about 50 miles now to the southeast of Tampa with the eye. We have had heavy rainfall blanketing areas of Tampa, St. Pete, Clearwater, back down into Bradenton, Anna Marie Island, down to Sarasota. They're on the back end. We are continuing, however, to still watch the southern flow, keeping the water banked up against the coastline in the southwest. Interesting to note, if you have not been with us all day, it did make landfall at a Category 4 in the Keys. That was between Key West and Big Pine Key, Category 4. That's the second Category 4 landfall we've had this year. That has never happened in recorded history in the U.S. And it's not just that it was June and one's in November. Both Harvey and Irma, within 16 days, we had a landfall Category 4. Now that the system is making its way slowly north, we've been watching incredible banding of severe thunderstorms from the Orlando area back through Cape Canaveral and off the coast. This has already been providing a number of tornadoes. We've had water spouts make their way inland. We even had one tornado warning that was moving at 74 miles per hour towards the northwest, but also heavy amounts of rainfall. In Melbourne, over 14 and a half inches. Okeechobee, we've had over 10 inches, and there's several of them that we can show you. But as we continue to see the movement to the north-northwest, our tornado watch box has kind of shrunk a little bit. It's still, of course, encompassing the north and northeastern quadrant. When we get closer in, notice the red and the yellow. That is that front right quadrant from our center. So that's always been the case as the powerhouse area. But again, keep in mind, those winds extend outward 80 miles. So damage is still with us. Getting a nice little pocket of some dry air infiltrating the system. We would like to see that get all the way in around the core to kind of choke off this system. That dry air will bleed it, and along with those winds to the north, kind of shred the system. So it's going to be a formidable storm. It's still a Category 2. Do not, let your guard down. Hunker down throughout the night until the system is north. Now, when it does move north of Tampa, that's when the winds come back into the bay. Right now, Don, the winds are out of the east to the west. So it's shoving all that water out of the inlets, out of the canals, and out of Tampa Bay, but it's going to come back. Not near as strong, but still, because that southern area, of course, around the eye will continue to shove that water back into the bay, but we're not looking at the intensity that we did earlier around Marco Island. 12 years ago, 2005, Wilma made landfall, the exact same location where, of course, Irma did in Marco Island. Same latitude and longitude, both at Category 3s. It's a little ironic. But again, we're watching the core moving northward, the bands of rain now moving toward Daytona. Some of the rainfall totals are quite heavy for a fast-moving storm. There's the 14.5 in Melbourne. You've got Miami-Dade over 13 in the third. Fort Pierce, that we had some pretty rough winds. In fact, the St. Lucie nuclear plant had 99-mile-per-hour wind gust about 2 hours ago. So we're not out of this, Don. We'll continue to monitor it. The rainfall shaft will continue to make its way northward, along with those still damaging sustained winds and even stronger gusts.
Tom Sater with the new forecast for Irma. Thank you, Tom. We'll check back with you. We want to get to our guys who are out there in the elements. Anderson Cooper is in Tampa. Ryan Young is in Clearwater, Florida. First to Ryan. Ryan, while this storm path is changing, you're still feeling the brunt of it there in Clearwater.
Yeah, we absolutely are. In fact, we moved our camera on the inside. My photographer, Larry, and my producer, Brad, are standing in some shelter right now as we stood here. And as we were standing right here, we noticed some explosions over to the left. It might have been a transformer of some sort that gave a big spark and a loud sound right before this live shot. So not sure what that is in the distance, but the wind just seems to be tunneling harder and harder. I mean, look, you can listen to it. I mean, that is the thing that we've been feeling over and over. And look, we talked to some people who came as far away as from Germany. They were here for their vacation, never expecting to face a storm, and then they were stuck to try to figure out what to do next as they went from hotel to hotel to figure out where to hunker down. And to imagine this is your first experience in America and to deal with a storm like this in this beautiful state, you can understand how scared some of those people are. We've also talked to other people who decided to make the decision not to leave their home. They wanted to stare the storm in the eye because they didn't want to leave their home with the goods, fearing that if they left, that they would get trapped somewhere else. And we even met people who came from as far away as Miami to avoid the storm, but still found a way to get caught in its eye, to some extent, in terms of the storm itself. But at this hour, Don, the conversation really is just the power of the wind as it keeps swirling around us. We're just south of the airport, and just depending on where I stand, you can see how the wind is just crossing from left to right or circling around us. And that has been the consistency here. We have seen some parts of roof tiles flying by us, and we've seen some billboards at this point succumb to the wind. And as I lean forward, you can hear just how powerful the wind gusts are. We've experienced at least 80-mile-per-hour winds at some point, and now we're getting another strong gust. It seems like no matter what we do, it gets a little tougher. You gotta spread your feet, though. It's all good. For the most part, though, we've been tremendously safe, and most people have gotten off the roads. In fact, we haven't seen a car on the roadways for about an hour and a half now, so it seems like people realize the worst of the storm may be coming this direction at this point, and they're eating it by staying inside. The last two things I'll mention is people in this area were worried about flooding because it does flood even in the best of times when it's just a strong rainfall, and that is something that people are concerned about in this late hours, the idea that there could be some serious ponding in the morning.
And that sounds you heard, what is it? You said it was a boom. Did it sound like a transformer blowing or what?
Yeah, so from our position, I'm just going to point this direction. Larry's actually on the inside of this carport that we're in. But down over here, we saw some sort of explosion. We believe it was some transformers that were popping. Didn't see any fire. It popped. We saw the flash of light, and that was it. And the one thing that we've talked about consistently is the idea that the power has remained on, but obviously in some places they're dealing with some transformer issues in terms of, I heard Chris say earlier, the snap, crackle, pop. Well, that's happening for real at this point.
All right, stand by, Ryan Young in Clearwater. Let's get to Anderson now in Tampa. Anderson, watching you earlier in the evening, well, first of all, I'm wondering what's going on there now, but also you saw a flash in the sky, which was quite possibly a transformer blowing as well.
Yeah, we've seen at least 5 or 6 of them. In fact, I think I saw the same one that Ryan was referring to, because Ryan's to the west of me. From my vantage point, it actually looked like 2 or 3 separate ones kind of clustered in an area not too far apart from each other. You don't actually hear anything. You just see this white-blue light. It's very eerie. Generally, the assumption is it's a transformer. That tends to be what they look like in these hurricanes. You know, I think a couple of big headlines from the latest forecast that Tom Sater brought. It's closer to being a Cat 1 than it is to being a Cat 3. To me, that's a headline. It's certainly better news for Tampa. It could have been worse news for Tampa, but it's better news for Tampa. It's better news for everybody. You know, there's still going to be hurricane force winds, about, you know, gusts of 100 miles an hour or so. That's nothing to scoff at, but it's not the 130 miles an hour winds that were feared here in Tampa yesterday. You know, storm surge here in Tampa was estimated yesterday to be 5 to 8 feet. That could have been really severe flooding in a lot of areas in low-lying Tampa and the Bay Area. We don't know what the storm surge estimates are right now. We didn't hear that from Tom, but we did hear that it's going to be lower than the previous estimates. As the wind speed is less, you're going to get less storm surge. That's more good news from Tampa. The key is, and I think, you know, Ryan said this, Tom Sater said this, is, you know, people have stayed inside this long. They need to just ride it out. There may be good news for Tampa. It could have been worse news, but it's better news. Certainly wouldn't say this thing is not over. The worst hours are yet to come. There's no doubt about it. It's going to be some miserable hours through the dawn, and we're not going to get a sense of the storm surge until, you know, early morning hours to really get a sense of how many communities, how many areas around here are without power, how many areas are flooded, what the extent of the flooding is, and how long it's going to take the water. It's going to be miserable hours ahead, but just stay inside, continue to you know, go to sleep if you can, and just ride this out. You know, if you've lasted this long inside, there's no reason to come out just because you think, oh, it's not as bad as I previously thought it might be.
Yeah, and you're right. And since you said that, you saw some people earlier today out checking out Tampa Bay. I mean, it's walking around, which is not a good idea, especially at this point.
Certainly not at this point. I mean, we've seen, you know, a handful of people walking around here tonight at, you know, even in this miserable, in these miserable conditions. I think they were just kind of curious. But certainly out today, you know, you're stuck inside. You're with your kids. You've got animals. You need to go out and walk them. You know, it's just boring, especially if some power has gone out. So people did come to the Riverwalk. They wanted to see this phenomenon of the water being sucked out. And that is still happening. You know, as Tom was saying, waiting until that wind shifts direction hours from now and that water is pushed back in. But again, the headline that I got from Tom on that storm surge is, because the winds are going to be less than predicted previously, it's not going to be rushing in to the speed that it might have been. And that is certainly good news for this area. All
right, Anderson, I want you to stand by, and Ryan as well, and we'll check back in with both of you. Anderson in Tampa, Ryan in Clearwater. I want to get to Stephanie Elam, because Stephanie is in Tampa as well, to see what's happening from her vantage point. You're moving around in Tampa. Where are you now and what's happening?
Don, I'm downtown, and I've moved over here so you can get a better look at just how it looks. I think when you look down this street here, you can see that the lights, how they're blowing and how the rain is coming in bands. And sometimes it's so strong, I can literally just lean into the wind and it holds me up. It's kind of a bizarre feeling here. But because you've got sort of this like pointy area of downtown here, you can feel the wind kind of swirl in a couple of ways through these tall buildings. And so once you get to this other cross street here, you see more of that coming across. But it's definitely starting to pick up in intensity and in strength on this side from where I am in downtown, a bit on the other side from where Anderson is. And as you can see, there's one person out here who I just really don't understand why people would come out here. It's not pleasant at all out here. Everything about being out here is there's no staying dry. You are completely wet. The wind can come up and throw you off your balance. You could fall. Something else could come and hit you. All of that's starting to happen out here. I mean, if you really don't understand how uncomfortable it is until you come and stand outside in a hurricane, right?
Yeah.
So we're prepared for it. We came out here to do this, and we want people to know that that's why we're doing it, so you don't have to do this. But if you look up this street, we've been watching the bands come down this street here in downtown Tampa, and between those office buildings, sometimes it comes really fast, and here's another one that's just about to come this way too. But yes, it's starting to pick up here, Don. It may be better than expected, but it's still really serious.
And I know you, Stephanie, and unless you would not be out in it unless you had to be, and this is part of your job, and that's why you're out. So heed the warnings from all of our correspondents and our meteorologists who have been saying, stay off the streets. It's dangerous. Thank you. Appreciate it. When we come back, our breaking news, the center of Hurricane Irma hitting southeast of Tampa right now as the storm
The roof there, oh, hate to see that. That again is in Fort Myers Estates, right in the middle of the living room, a tree through the house.
That is
hopefully
very
no one
sad.
was hurt. Hopefully
Yeah,
no one was
I think
hurt.
that's the worst that we've seen so far. So I'm so sorry to see those pictures. Sorry that you're going through that. Let's take you now to the 3000 block of North Key Drive in North Fort Myers. This video was taken right around 7 o'clock from Kevin Cloutier, and we appreciate you sending this in. And thank you also for letting us know what time you took this. I know that's very helpful, especially to our meteorologists who are mapping everything out and seeing, what things are checking out with the forecast.
Let's go to the Howard Johnson Inn on 41. And this is at about 7 o'clock in Fort Myers, right on 41. And you can see the parking lot there. They're just shooting things from underneath the canopy there just to keep themselves safe. But you can see the rain was coming down heavy still at 7 o'clock there on 41 in Fort Myers.
Northwest Cape, 26th place. We're seeing the strong wind from this video. Thank you to the person who sent it in, and thank you all for sending in your videos and giving us an idea. I know it's very helpful to people who have had to evacuate their homes. They want to know what their neighborhoods look like and see if there's any damage. We're seeing mostly, it looks like landscaping damage, a lot of trees.
Yeah, of course, but it's early because we have not been into so many neighborhoods. We just have no idea how widespread it might be until the authorities get out there. Week News reporter Taylor Bisacki is on Fort Myers Beach at the Diamond Head Resort right now. Taylor, the last time we talked to you, the water was coming up. What's the situation there now?
Well, I do want to update you on what's going on right now. We did show you earlier when the water was coming up. This dock right here is about a couple feet. It doesn't look like the water has come up since then, just inching a little bit. So we're still in good shape in that sense. But take a look at these winds. They have not died down. I brought my flashlight out here so I could show you more about what's going on. And I just want to walk you through to show you some of this debris that's going on. Take a look. Some coconuts have already fallen. So again, we are under shelter. We are covered above our heads, so we're safe right here. But just gonna walk you around. Some palm trees, coconuts laying around. Again, if you're outside, though, this is very dangerous. We want you to stay inside. Now, I want to show you video though of that storm surge earlier. We did send some video of that. Those waters coming up. It's a little hard to see now that it's dark, but if you can see those waves coming up, the wind's still very strong. But let me just tell you, we had a meeting earlier. As I mentioned in my earlier hits that we were running on a backup generator, backup power. Well, that's all going to turn off around 10 to conserve it, so we'll still have it to ride out this storm for however long we don't have power. So we'll continue to check in with you guys, and we'll let you know whenever these waters do get higher.
Taylor, I don't know if you can hear us well enough for us to ask you a question, but how is everybody else in the hotel that you're with doing?
Everyone else is doing pretty well. I was talking to them. We were all a little bit anxious, all a little bit scared before this storm hit. You know how we've been talking about this storm as it was approaching all week. So we were really expecting some really strong forces, and we are seeing them, but most people are feeling very calm, very safe. We're in a concrete building. Again, we're at the Diamond Head Resort, and everyone is staying safe so far. So we're doing
Get
pretty
you
good.
back live now, and there's Tampa, Florida. You can see, look at that street light. That's going to come down soon. And the worst of the winds haven't even hit Tampa yet. They're getting some bad winds, but look at what's going on there. Hurricane Irma absolutely slamming Florida as it moves north, spreading destruction in its wake. I want to get back now to Ryan Young. Ryan is in Clearwater, which is really getting pounded tonight, not far from Tampa. So, listen, this storm path has changed, but you're still feeling the brunt of it right there in Clearwater, and we've been watching you all evening.
Yeah, absolutely. And in just the last 5 minutes or so, we actually saw our first emergency vehicle pass by us with lights and sirens. I have no idea what call they're responding to, but to think about a high-profile vehicle like the ambulance that passed by us with lights and sirens dealing with this wind, you have to give your take your hat off to the first responders to do this on a day-to-day basis, but think about it on a day like this. They're really putting their life on the line to really help somebody out. Now, we step out, having my photographer Larry kind of walk out and tell you the difference here. We're kind of under this overhang to trying to give us some shelter, but as we walk back out this direction, this is where the wind really changes. And this is where it becomes pretty fierce, Don. And it's just really a difference in terms of just where I was standing. And now, the difference in terms of what I'm dealing with. Look, just in our last few days, we've been able to meet some people who really were trying to make sure that their neighbors were taken care of. In fact, we met a businessman yesterday named Alan Bridges, and what he was doing is he was actually giving away wood because so many people didn't have shelter. So he was giving away plywood so people could board up their windows. And we shot this video, and we saw the desperation in people's faces as they tried to get some wood to board up the windows. That's what we've seen throughout the area in terms of people not having the proper devices and pieces of wood they need to board up windows because you need it to deal with the wind that we're dealing with right now. And as you can see, sometimes, man, the gusts, they don't knock. It just kind of comes and punches you a little bit. Again, we do have some sort of safety if it got too windy to kind of sit right here and grab. And that way, it kind of changes the conversation. Or like I said before, if you block off the wind, I'm going to have Larry step back just a little bit. If you block off the wind, it changes the entire conversation. That's really the difference here. If you have something that's kind of blocking you, yes, you can have a conversation. Yes, I can hear you. But when the gusts hit 80 miles per hour, it changes the whole conversation in terms of just how powerful they are. We have seen some explosions in the distance. Not sure if those were transformers popping. That's what we believe they are. The lights that we've been looking at on and off all night, they've been hanging in there. We have seen signs blow down. But for the most part, even the billboard that we've been watching all night, the one that we've seen kind of give a little bit, the one up there, it stood the test of time. And
so far,
amazingly, somehow the power is still on.
Yeah, so far, for both of those, it stood the test of time so far, that billboard.
Absolutely.
And the power is still on so far. Listen, I know it's
Yes.
at the end of summer, it's Florida, but how cold is that rain?
You know what? The temperature dropped, so it definitely got cold. I would say it feels like, I live in Chicago now, so this doesn't feel bad at all. I mean, honestly, it feels like a pool, but it's not bad. The temperature has dropped. It's really the wind that gets you as it hits you over and over. But this is nothing compared to the Windy City when it comes to the coldness factor, especially for a Florida guy.
I know. It was my home at one point, too, and that rain, that's like bathwater compared to Chicago. But listen, still very dangerous at this point. Ryan, stick around. I need to get to the police chief of Tampa tonight, and his name is Brian Dugan. He joins us via phone to get the latest information there. So listen,
.45 this afternoon where I was out on the street with the officers, And based upon the information we had from the National Weather Service and what I was feeling out on the street, we pulled our officers off the street.
You did.
Now, we have a contingency group in extreme emergencies that will respond. But no, we are not responding out on the street.
Yeah. What are you concerned about right now, Chief?
Just, what's going to still be standing, what's going to be flooded, the wind damage. I was out about 2 hours ago assessing where we stood out in the city, going through downtown along our Bayshore area, and it was holding up well. The biggest concern was there was no water in the bay, very, very shallow. And, obviously when that water comes back in, it's, going to be hold on to your hats and let's see where everything's standing.
Yeah. And that is a concern for a lot of folks, the flooding and the storm surge. But as I'm talking to you right now, Chief Dugan, we're looking at this live picture and we're seeing these stoplights really blowing around and one of them really hanging by a thread. And, we're concerned about projectiles. I'm sure you are too. You've told people to stay off the streets, but that's got to be a concern for you as well.
Yeah, you worry about, people not being able to see, what's on the streets and stuff. And that's why we're asking everybody to stay indoors. I was out. You can see the different blue lights in the sky that, appear to be a flash, like maybe it's a transformer or something. I can tell you as of 2 hours ago, I saw several areas that had, power outages just driving around. And it was interesting that there were some spots that had power and then, a few blocks down the street that had none.
Yeah. Well, and so you have some power. And when you have winds like this, those overhead power lines, are you concerned about that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's definitely, when the storm clears, that's going to be the first thing we look at, what are live wires, what aren't, and things like that. And, when you get into the flooding, you got, live power lines. And, this is Florida. You don't know what type of wildlife is going to be out there in the water also.
And that is a very good point, especially in Florida. You never know with that ecosystem down there. So listen, speaking of that, speak to me a little bit more about the storm surge that you're bracing for. Can you prepare for that?
Well, we ask people to evacuate, and that's all we can do. You can't stop water. No matter how hard you try, it's tough, and you certainly don't want to test Mother Nature. And we're just gonna have to stand by and see where everything evens off.
Mayor Brian Dugan of Tampa. Police Chief Brian Dugan of Tampa. Thank you, Chief. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
When we come back, Hurricane Irma, such a monster storm. It's spreading destruction from coast to coast as 3 million people are without power tonight.
Well, as you can see, these winds are really picking up still. I'm having a little trouble standing, and the sand is smacking me in the face, so it's a little hard to hear. But let me show you. A lot of you have reached out to me in my Facebook messages, asked me what is going on with this storm surge. I'm using that palm tree that has fallen down that we showed you about 2 hours ago as a reference. That water still has not crossed that palm tree. So good news for you guys who've been asking for updates. We're not really seeing that water come up much higher, maybe a couple inches, but it has not crossed that. Now, I also want to show you, we did take video of that storm surge earlier, so you can probably see it better in daytime. So let's look at that video. You can see those waves coming in. They're still coming in, but again, they're keeping back a little bit. And we did hear from one woman, one of the people that are here staying with us, and she's a little concerned. Everybody, while we wait out this storm, the biggest concern now is that storm surge.
It's scary. I wouldn't want to be out there. I'm glad we didn't stay in our home. We are right in evacuation zone B, and I just hope we have something to go back to.
Something to come back to is exactly right, because just look right here. All of this debris that we are seeing just from these high winds, we really don't know what to anticipate, what we're going to see after these storm surges also come through. But like we've been showing you throughout this newscast, we're seeing a lot of debris, a lot of coconuts. Look at all the coconuts down there on the ground. The palm trees are howling. The wind is howling. So we still are unsure about what we're going to wake up to tomorrow morning, but stick with us. We're going to continue to update you and let you know what is going on, especially here on Fort Myers Beach.
Taylor, it's dark now, so it's hard for us to obviously see. So maybe you can give us a sense of, has the water come up more since we last joined you a few minutes ago?
Since you last joined me here, let's go look down here a little bit. We're not going to go too far out. We're going to stay safe. But I know you can't really see out there, but as you can see that palm tree right there, I'm using that as a reference because that was there 2 hours ago when we first came out. As you can see below it, water has not crossed that palm tree. Water is behind that. So this dock's about a couple, I guess I would say, you know, maybe a foot up or so, and the water has not come out that far. This
All right, Taylor. Thank you very much.
We are here in Southwest Cape Coral where we've been all day near Tarpon Point Marina, and the rain has slowed down. These winds are still very strong though, but finally we've been able to step outside for the first time in a few hours, and we want to give you guys our first look at some of the damage here. This is a tree that we've been showing you pretty much most of the afternoon. This is nearby where our crew is staying, where we stay to ride out the storm. This massive tree now blocking this residential road, but I want to walk with you, if you can, just down this way. My photographer Ben showing you these roots of the tree just completely picked up. You can also see over this way, it landed on a water line. So this water line for most of the afternoon has just been gushing out water. We're going to walk over this way too. You can see some of the brick pavers on the road pulled up from the wind, and this now is giving you a look at the backside, at the underside of this tree. You can see these roots just completely torn up out of the ground. The winds here in Cape Coral so strong they uprooted this tree, and again it is now laying in the road, blocking this road right now. It'll still probably be a few hours, if not until the morning, until first responders can get out here and hopefully clear this. But again, guys, this is just a first look at some of the damage that we're seeing here in Southwest Cape Coral. We have gotten some pictures and videos from you at home of what it's looking like in your backyards and your front yards. We have seen some flooding across Cape Coral. We have seen some downed trees. And again,
look at these live pictures. This is Tampa, Florida right now. And you can see, man, the wind is whipping there. The rain is coming down. We've been showing you these street lights are just dangling by a string. There in Tampa, Florida. Let's hope they don't come down. We just spoke to the police chief, said he's worried about storm surge. He's worried about projectiles. They're worried about possible lines coming down, a whole host of things. This is all, of course, from Hurricane Irma, spreading destruction from coast to coast in Florida, from Tampa east across the state to Orlando and Daytona Beach. Let's go to CNN's Bryn Gingras. Bryn is in Orlando, and then we're going to go to Sarah Seidman as well in Daytona. But first, Bryn, I understand that you have some breaking information there in Orlando. What do you have for us?
Pretty hard with the storm, but this was a fraction of what we were seeing not too long ago. And at that time, we saw a transformer blow. We saw a ton of emergency vehicles going that direction. Well, we've learned that they were responding to a fatality. A car crashed, a single car crashed into something, and the person that was in that car when authorities arrived on scene was dead. So they can't really say quite yet if it's 100% storm related, because of course, you know, that involves an investigation, and with these conditions, no emergency officials or vehicles are out on the roads, so they can't investigate that particular scene. But it does seem to be because of the storm people were driving. A curfew was in place at 7 o'clock, so they were expecting everyone to be off the roads. But Don, I can tell you, even just within 15 minutes ago, we saw a car driving around on these roads. Here, Don, we're expecting conditions to get worse within the next hour or so. That's when we're supposed to be reaching the worst until early hours of this tomorrow morning. And right now, sure, it's not too bad. I'm not getting blown around too much, but then a wind gust comes around and it really pushes me aside, Don.
I got to ask you, I saw Stephanie out, Brent, and
we, for the most part, people are following, not actually coming out here, but driving is a different story. I'm so shocked when I see actually cars going through here, because like I said, that car crash happened, and we also heard that an emergency vehicle hydroplaned and got stuck on the highway. So it's certainly not driving conditions or walking for that matter.
All right, Brent, thank you. Stay safe out there. Sarah Seidner in Daytona Beach for us. Sarah, you're on the east coast of Florida for us in Daytona. What are you dealing with right now?
We're literally on A1A, Beachfront Avenue, made famous by a singer whose name I will not reveal. Just kidding, Vanilla Ice. It has calmed down a little bit, but we're still doing this thing with the gusts like everybody else. And I wanted to give you an idea why they try to tell people to please stay inside. If you'll look, there's debris that's been coming down. There was some debris that came down from 7 stories up from the hotel. Something snapped off, made of metal. And then what we're seeing here on A1A is we're seeing a lot of plastic, and I think that's from the tops of trash cans. And so if you'll look, those are strewn all over A1A, right outside here, right near the convention center, the Ocean Center, as it's called here in Daytona Beach. But take a look behind me, because what you're seeing there, you can see the gust. Look at that sign, the Auditorium Boulevard sign. You see it swinging back and forth and swinging back and forth. That area is, the beach is on the other side of this hotel. So where you're seeing that sign about 200 yards to the left is Daytona Beach. And so you're getting a heck of a lot of wind just coming off of the beach. You're seeing the palm trees now go absolutely nuts here near the convention center. Hard to see with the camera. I'm going to see if we can just quickly walk over to give you a look at that. There's quite a few of them here. You can see the light going there. But what is important about where we are is this is one of the staging areas for the linemen and those who trim the trees, so that people who are without power can have their power come back on. We've already seen some transformers blowing here. We've also seen the lights go off and on in the streets. But there are dozens of linemen here ready to go out as soon as the winds die down and start taking care of that power problem that is across Florida. Dawn?
Sarah, be safe. Thank you very much. When we come back, Irma pounding Florida with violent winds and torrential rains as it moves north, downing power lines and leaving a trail of debris behind.
Of what people here in Southwest Cape Coral are going to be dealing with come tomorrow morning. For now, in Cape Coral, Brooke Schaefer, Wink.
All right, Channing, thank you.
I want to go now to Fort Myers Police Chief Derek Diggs.
Than we've
we have
seen
Chief
here
Diggs
in the
on
last
phone.
few hours. I know Bobby was talking about, really, as we get into the midnight hours, 3 a.m., that this will start to continually increase. We could see those 85-mile-per-hour wind gusts up to maybe 90-mile-per-hour wind gusts. We're seeing some of these massive sustained wind gusts right here in St. Pete at this Hilton Carillon Park St. Petersburg Hotel. Guys, I can't begin to tell you just how really powerful this storm is as it continues to approach here. Good news is Bobby and everybody is kind of related to this storm weakening. Should be around a Category 1 as it gets towards this St. Petersburg area, but still, even so, the storm hasn't even arrived yet, and you're starting to see, as you're seeing right here live, these massive gusts. Now, I know power outages have been an area of concern around Tampa Bay. I saw a number about 35 minutes ago, around 200,000 people have lost power. Still here in St. Pete at this hotel, we have not lost power. We will continue to keep you updated on the status of that, but still here in St. Pete, it seems like a lot of people still have power. So, guys, hopefully everybody's staying safe. The crews out there, these wind gusts, no joke. I hope you guys are staying safe wherever you are here in the Tampa Bay region. Back to you guys in the studio, reporting live here in North St.
Guys, I wanted to bring you an update from our position here on the 22nd floor in downtown Tampa. We have an expansive view to the south that allows us to see the port, everything to the east of us, including eastern Hillsborough County and all the way around to the west, almost into Pinellas County. I can tell you that we're seeing a little bit of a break in the action right now, but it's brief. The wind is still kicking, but I'm not getting as much rain. Let me step out of the way so that we can take a look at the minarets. That is the University of Tampa down there, and you can see, based on the rain that is falling past those bright lights, yes, they still have electricity over there. You can see how the driving rain is still moving through South Tampa right now. In fact, if you tilt down a little bit, you can see some bright lights on the water, and in front of that, there's actually somebody walking down in Curtis Hickson Park right now. The reflection of those lights on the ground in Curtis Hickson Park, saturated down there. Now, it's not covered by any sort of a storm surge, and that's good news. And in fact, I can make it out, but it might be difficult for people to see in the dark, that the tide level inside the Hillsborough River is still pretty low right now. I'm assuming it's still the same on Bayshore, which is an indication that Hurricane Irma still has not pushed that water back into our area. Now, it's a weaker storm, so eventually it's going to come back in, but it might not come back in with the sort of vengeance that we were expecting had it roared right up the Hillsborough River and into Tampa Bay. I want to also show you, again, we did this a little bit earlier. I'm not trying to spy into anybody's apartments or anything, but take a look at one of the buildings next to us that's also an apartment building. Those are some condos. And not only can you see that people still have their electricity in that building, but just based upon the configuration of the apartments, you can see they're all still watching television. A lot of them are still watching what's going on with the storm right now. And even in the darkness, I could make out just not too long ago a couple of people doing what we were doing, just sort of poking their heads out onto their balconies to see what was going on out here. As you move from right to left, you can still see the Sykes building, the beer can building. We've got good visibility of it right now, which shows you it's not as much rain falling, as I said, but it is still very, very windy out here where we are standing. And as we continue to make our way across downtown Tampa, you can see if you tilt down a little bit and you take a look at the streets, you can see the traffic lights reflecting off of the ground. Right now, red lights to the left, green lights to the right, but it doesn't matter which side you're looking at on both sides.
We get you now live to Clearwater, Florida, and you can see the wind really whipping up there. That's where Ryan Young has been stationed all evening, and he has been bringing us the coverage of the downpours and also the wind. Power lines being taken down there, leaving a trail, Irma, of debris from coast to coast in Florida. But first, we need to get to CNN's Brian Todd. Brian joins us from West Palm Beach. And Brian, as I understand, you saw something that prompted a very dramatic rescue, right?
Right, Don, in Palm Beach County, which, by the way, has been pounded with hurricane force winds now for coming up on about 11 and a half hours, which is just a sustained barrage here of wind and rain. Palm Beach County, not far from where we are, we learned of a dramatic rescue. 50-plus people were pulled from an apartment complex. It was called the Stony Brook Complex in Riviera Beach, Florida. The mayor of that town, Thomas Masters, told us that he had to go there with fire and rescue teams and police when the roofs got ripped off of 2 units in that apartment complex. They went door to door and made sure people got out, but they pulled more than 50 people out. They got them to a shelter in higher ground and in a safer area, including several children, and he reported that none of them were injured. But this is kind of the product of what we've been going through here, again, for close to 12 hours here in Palm Beach County, where we're standing here over on this street, Flagler Drive, along the Intercoastal Waterway. Debris has been flying for hours. We saw 3 transformers blow about a block away from us, just an intense kind of blue concussive blast going up in the sky and shorting out these the power grid here. But, you know, again, that rescue, that was fortunate. They're going to go and reassess that apartment complex in the morning to make sure that everyone got out of there safely. At this hour, Don, we believe they did, but they're going to have to reassess that when dawn hits.
All right, Brian Todd, I want you to be safe out there. We'll get back to Brian Todd in West Palm Beach. I want to bring in now Chief Mike Murphy of Marco Island Fire and Rescue, and he joins us by phone. Chief, we appreciate you joining us. A lot to talk to you about. When we spoke to you on Friday night, you told me that you were bracing for a direct hit, and you got it. Irma made landfall on Marco Island at 3:35 this morning. You were just out assessing the damage. What did you see?
It appears that we had when the tidal surge came in, it was not as great as was previously predicted. However, we do have a lot of areas that are flooded in the roadway areas. We did have some areas that had water coming up into the garages of the homes. 2 major factors happened during this storm. We lost all power to the entire island, 24 square mile island, and the second component was our water system went down during the storm. We received a number of calls for assistance. We had one structure with a tree go through it with 3 people trapped and 3 other incidents initially. We got out on the road. We assessed the damage. A lot of people were having to stay in place. And so we can assess the situation in the morning. What we are seeing is areas of the island have major trees and obstructions to the roadways, and access around portions of the island have been diminished. But we've made some push teams out, and we've opened up a lot of our major corridors so that we can get rescue assets onto the island.
Hey, Chief, I just wanted to be clear. You said you had a rescue? You had to conduct a rescue?
We conducted a few rescues in reference to getting people that were inside houses, water coming into them, and or had medical issues. A couple of people called in structural collapses with injuries, but it was not significant events as far as injuries or anything, and we did get those people out of those locations.
What about power and your water system tonight, Chief?
We have no power, no water system. We do not anticipate power and a water system back on, perhaps for a complete couple of days at the on the long side. There appears to be some infrastructure damage to our water system, and as far as power, we have a number of power lines down, poles down, and that will be assessed in the morning. We do have the LTC, which is our supplier power, coming onto the island. Part of our problem occurred in that units from the outside resources could not get to us. We have a 6-mile corridor. Between us and the major intersection. The corridor was blocked by debris, and on one side of us on the south was under 4 feet of water all the way up to the bridge.
What kind of help do you need?
Tomorrow morning, our major focus is going to be, once we can get some assets onto the island, we are going to have to go. We have over 700 condominiums of various 2 stories to 24 stories. We need to make sure all the occupants that are in those facilities are safe, the ones that remain. We will do a damage assessment in the morning. We've requested some assets to do that from our county EOC and the state, and we anticipate that they will be arriving. And the second component is, based upon what we find, we may set up a temporary shelter on the island based upon the electrical problems and other problems we have with the water. The island will not be able to sustain themselves, and the people that are on the island will not be able to do that either. So we may have to set up a temporary shelter off island and get those individuals out that wish to leave.
Mike Murphy, Marco Island Fire and Rescue Chief. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
When we come back, Hurricane Irma pounding Florida from coast to coast as residents are warned that life-threatening storm surges could come next.
I'm S.E. Cupp. You might know me from here. Trump has a history of misunderstanding the role of the press. Average voters want kitchen table issues discussed. But now I'm here on HLN.
S.E. Cupp, Unfiltered, weeknights at 7 on HLN.
10 seasons on CNN. How the did that happen?
Because I can tell you that, again, where we are, it seems calm, but that's because we have a huge building blocking the wind for us right now. That's why we chose this location, to be able to bring you these images and be able to update you on what was going on. But the through downtown. I don't know if you're still able to see it because it's a little bit dark, but we were able to maybe a parking lot or something else, but one of the trees in that lot actually got toppled over, and you can see it there. It's still reflected. The tree's obviously still down. It's not going to prop itself back up. I can't tell whether or not it's damaged the small hut that was next to it. It's maybe a little parking building, but it looks like it may have fallen right in that direction. And I don't know if you can tell on your camera, through the camera lens right now, but as we take that picture, the amount of rain has started to pick back up again. So another squall line moving through. I will tell you that the rain is still blowing from my left to right, which means that it's still going from the east to the west, which means that the rotation is still from below us. Obviously, the eye has not reached us yet. That's that counterclockwise turn, the clouds moving from the east to the west over Tampa right now. And again, as I can show you, the range is kind of picking up. But that's the situation from where we are. Again, 22nd floor in downtown Tampa. It's been good to us so far, and hopefully good for you to be able to see what's going on, for us to be able to bring you information about the loss of power. Again, earlier we saw a lot of transformers going. In the last few minutes, I haven't seen any. That's good news as well. So hopefully not as many people losing power, but again, some of the strongest gusts still coming our way. I'll update you when we see.
And that was just recently,
again,
wasn't
at 7 p.m. tonight. It goes through 7:30 tomorrow morning. The county superintendent has come out via Twitter and a news conference and said that schools are now closed for the foreseeable future. They had initially said schools were closed Friday and Monday. It is now extending because roads are impassable and there's just too much damage. And the last thing, Miami International Airport, they've announced all flights in the airport is closed tomorrow. Limited flights back up on Tuesday. Mike and Melissa.
For us.
Well, take a look. Still these strong winds, and take a listen. We're still hearing those howls, but I want to give you guys some good news, okay? I've been using this dock and that palm tree down there. I know you can't see much, but I've been using it as reference. This dock's probably about a foot up. That palm tree I've been referencing, that water, the storm surge water has still not crossed it. So this is good news for us. We're still not seeing that surge water come up. Good news for a lot of people who have been asking me, Facebook messaging me, and trying to reach out to get some updates on this. But let's move over here. I want to show you what we're also seeing. We're seeing a lot of debris. This is also why we are under cover here, because look at all those coconuts that have fallen. And take a look up. Those winds are still kicking up, so it's still not safe out there for you guys to head out. Look at that palm. Take a look at some video that we shot earlier of those storm surge waters, just so you can see what we were referencing and what we were talking about. In that video, you can see those waves, pretty rocky, pretty rough, very uncommon to see for the Gulf, but we just wanted to show you that so you can see what we were referencing. But again, we'll continue to stay on top of this, on top of those storm surges here on the beach.
All right, thank you very much, Taylor, all the way up into some of the seagrass.
Who took the call. All right, there are a lot of titles there, but basically, we can call you guys major delivery guys because you help to deliver a baby. So thank you all for joining us. I think you'll take that title. Lou, tell us what it was like when that call came in right in the middle of the hurricane.
Yeah, well, most people can't imagine the chaos that goes on in the 911 dispatch center during a crisis, and this being a major hurricane, dispatchers are here 24/7, 365. So phones were ringing off the hook, and I happened to be the lucky one who picked up the line. And basically, baby was coming when I picked up. I mean, you know, you heard mom in the background, and basically my job was to make sure I got the right address from dad, just try to keep him focused, understand what was going on and what was happening, and basically get the call in immediately and get it up to our police and firemen, the paramedics, to make sure we got the help out there to bring baby into the world.
Now, I know it's kind of chaotic out there. Just to make sure I have my story right. Scott, did you drive the rescue vehicle through the storm? And was
I had a team of 5 people in our armored vehicle. Detective Koenig was actually driving it, and we were responding to any priority calls in the city during the storm.
How hard was it to reach the house?
It was very hard. We had a lot of storm damage, trees down, power lines down. We had to take an alternate route to get to the house.
Okay, so then John Whalen and Chris Hurst, what were how did you guys play a part in this?
We got a call from our incident command system that's in the central of the city.
And this is John speaking right now, right?
It was a video phone call, and they said, "How would you like to deliver a baby?" And I kind of laughed, and they said, "We're not kidding." And I said, "Absolutely, tell us where you need us." And they chose our vehicle because of the lower profile. We're in a command vehicle, which is more like a four-wheel drive truck. And they said, "Your vehicle's a lower profile. It's got four-wheel drive, and you're the only ones that can get there." So I grabbed Chris, who's my driver for the remainder of the storm, and said, "We're going to deliver a baby." And he said, "Okay." And the team here at the station that we're at started scrambling around, grabbing equipment for us off of the rescue trucks and fire engines here at the station. They gave us an OB kit. They gave us oxygen. They gave us some airway stuff in case we had any issues. And we jumped in the truck, and we were actually very fortunate. The incident commanders were correct that the engines and rescues would not have been able to get through what we had to go through to get to their home. Yeah. So Chris is an expert driver, and he got us through there safely and quickly. And we pulled up, and we were not expecting what we saw.
Hey, Chris, I mean, that was John speaking. I just want to make sure. Now, Chris, your driving expertise or skills have never been more important.
No, it was pretty hairy getting through there. We had a four-wheel drive truck. We had to go over a bunch of curbs. There was a bunch of trees down. But once we got in there, and then they had the Bearcat in there really quick, which is the armored vehicle, which was really cool. Got it. We'd never got a fire truck back in there.
Yeah. So who actually delivered the baby?
Chris and myself. When we got there, she was pretty much almost all the way out, and she was the patient's mother, the mother of the person in labor, was actually pretty much delivering the baby, her own granddaughter, in the bathroom on the floor.
Wow.
And I've never met or seen a more calm scene in the chaos that was going on outside. We were kind of taken back by, it looked like a labor and delivery room, and everybody was extremely calm, and everybody was smiling, and it was very calming to Chris and I to walk into that non-chaotic scene and then start doing what we had to do. And I'll let Chris talk about the things that we had to do, but he was very instrumental in making sure that the baby, because he kind of took control of the baby, and I started dealing with the mother and the things we had to do with her.
But you guys did come in there and help out. I mean, it wasn't just the mom. It was underway, but you guys helped.
The cord was still there, so we had to cut the cord. So we clamped the cord and cut the cord, and baby wasn't presenting really good at first, but she pinked right up. You know, it was a beautiful little baby.
Yeah. How are the mom and baby doing now?
They're doing great. We checked on them. She hugged us all before we left, and we told her we had to go because we had other emergencies we needed to take care of, and she didn't want us to leave, and told us to please come back to the house and see the baby after all this, and we promised her we would. And we asked her if she would name the baby Irma, and she said absolutely not, and named the baby April, which is a beautiful name. And I just want to reiterate, how important the Bearcat crew was in all of this, because this would not have turned out so well for anybody if they were not able to get back there and transport her and the baby to the hospital in a timely manner. And without them, this would have turned out much differently.
We see you guys in an armored vehicle. The mom is on the floor, and then we see this bald guy with sunglasses on his head. Which one of you is that?
That is Chris Hurst,
holding the baby. Yeah.
That's Chris Hurst, and I got to tell you, I think that if I would have tried to take the baby from him, he would have probably knocked me to the ground. He wasn't letting go of that baby. He started the job, and he made sure he finished it to the hospital. I didn't think he wanted to give it up to the nurses at the hospital because the baby latched on to him and wouldn't let go of his hand. And it was we were trying to do everything professionally, but I wanted to take pictures to share.
The big storm continues in a moment right here on the Fox News Channel with Kelly Wright and
You
Laura
guys are awesome. Scott, Lou, John, and Chris. Amazing. Nice job.
I want to say thanks for including us in this. It was great teamwork between Coral Springs Dispatch, Police, and Fire. Dispatchers usually aren't included very often in this, but it's a great feeling to have the teamwork. And a lot of times when people call 911, it's not for something happy. And today, I always say 911 dispatchers save lives. Well, today was very pleasurable to help start a life. So City of Coral Springs really did a great job today. I'm proud to be a part of it.
Nice job, guys. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
And when we come back, Irma pounding Florida with violent winds and torrential rains as it moves north. More than 3 million people across the state without power. Dangerous debris flying around in that
The rain
darkness.
has died down. We stepped out for just a few minutes to give you guys some of the first looks at this damage, what people will be waking up to tomorrow morning. Right now, you're looking at a light pole. The covering for that light actually blown off in the wind. It's now shattered across this person's front yard. If we walk a little bit further down, you can see this branch of a tree just barely missing this car. We walked around the car. It does look like it's okay, but still, you can tell this is just giving you an indication how strong these winds are from Hurricane Irma here in Southwest Cape Coral. Even the worst of it's gone. We're still feeling these winds and still likely more damage to come from this. As we keep walking, if you look over this way, another tree. This tree sort of snapped in the middle A few of the branches were cracked off, and I don't know if you guys can tell, it took down some wiring with it, and it's covering a sign over here. So this is going to be an issue for the homeowners here. A lot of cleanup that people are going to be dealing with tomorrow morning. And guys, this is just down the street from where we have been staying all afternoon. We stayed inside, and even further down, there's a tree blocking the road. So lots of damage here already just on this street in Southwest Cape Coral. And it's going to be a few hours, if not until tomorrow morning, before first responders can get out and start dealing with this, because as you can see, these winds still really gusting, and everybody's going to want to stay indoors and probably reassess in the morning and see what homeowners are going to be waking up to tomorrow. For now, in Cape Coral, Brooke Schaefer, Wink News Now.
Brooke, and right now we...
Hi, Chris. Yeah, I am standing next to the tree that went down earlier today. This was one of the first trees we saw to go down. It has been completely uprooted. There's just pretty much a whole, a swimming pool of water under this tree. I want to take you over this way so you can see, miraculously, somehow, it didn't break the windshield of this car. We were told earlier that this is the car of a 911 dispatcher here, but you can see that branch, it snapped right there. It just missed that rear view mirror of that car, that side mirror. So they got pretty lucky. I know that's not the same for everyone in the county. This is just a first look at the damage Irma has caused the county. Now I want to show you what was outside of our window earlier today. We know this storm caused a lot of damage in the county, but we did ride it out inside safely with EMS crews. Dan Summers, the director of emergency services here, just gave us a lot of new information in a press conference. We know now the county is officially under a curfew until 6 a.m. That's for your safety. He says the roadways are absolutely not safe to navigate.
But you're much better off where you are than to attempt to leave your location and drive somewhere where the power is out. There's substantial debris, signal masts.
Risky for them in a big truck. So if you have the urge to leave the shelter, we sympathize, but it's just...
Our breaking news right now, Hurricane Irma absolutely slamming Florida as it moves north, spreading destruction from coast to coast. The center of that storm is about 50 miles southeast of Tampa right now. CNN Stephanie Elam is there. Ryan Young is not far away in Clearwater, and Karen McGinnis is in the CNN Weather Center. Ryan, I want to start with you because while this storm path is changing, you're still getting the brunt of it in Clearwater.
Still getting the brunt of it. Look, we went from Tampa to Clearwater to St. Pete, back to Clearwater today. And I can tell you the wind here has been relentless. This has been going on for hours at this point. And we talked about the fact that we've seen debris flying through the air. We've also kind of switched positions a little bit. Have Larry come kind of close to me. We're going to walk out toward the street here. One of the things that we've noticed is all the sideway water just sort of flows in different directions. And we've seen the wind crisscrossing. We even had gusts up to 80 miles per hour throughout this afternoon and into the evening. And one of the things that we've noticed is the signs some of them have started to come apart. We've also noticed the billboards have started to shear just a little bit. Now, we've been watching that large billboard up there. So far, so good. But the real conversation is about the decisions that people made to stay in their homes. Now, there are some people who were told they needed to evacuate, but they wanted to stay in their homes. And as we walk out here, you can see the difference in the wind, Don. It has been relentless for hours in terms of just these gusts. And the direction keeps changing. So the last half hour we talked to you, the wind wasn't this strong from this direction. We've actually changed positions and kind of walked away from the building, and it's just a crisscross of winds. And you think about the pounding on a roof or a small space, you can understand what some of the homes are going through in Florida right now. In the last half hour, we also noticed an emergency vehicle on the way to a call. You got to think about law enforcement officials who are putting their lives in the line, especially as they try to make these rescues out here. It's the first car that we've seen on the road in several hours, and it seems like, as you see my cameraman getting blown around a little bit, the wind is actually picking up even stronger as we talk to you. We'll have to see what happens overnight. But so far, every time we think there's going to be a break in the wind, it seems to get a little bit stronger, Don.
All right, I want you to be safe. Ryan, we'll get back to you. Ryan Young in Clearwater, Florida. Stephanie Elam now in Tampa. So, Stephanie, when we saw you last, You were out there, Stephanie, right there. Stephanie, you were out in the street in downtown Tampa. What are you seeing now?
Yeah, the wind's really picking up there. I just took a little bit of a beating. I'm trying to get to know what Ryan has been talking about over there in Clearwater. But it comes up and it kind of surprises you when it happens here. The wind's so strong that I'm watching the water going down the side of the street here.
Good production. Twice.
Down to the drain, pushes it back, and then the wind stops and it pushes it back the other way. That's how strong the wind is when it comes through here. And for the most high-rise building and just ride it out. They may feel the swaying a little bit more, but they are planning on staying here. But for the most part, people have heeded the warnings. Gosh, take a look down here. Look down the street. You can see, hopefully you can see, the rain coming down in bands, and I think I see a couple more people out there. And this car coming down this way as well, which there is a curfew in effect here in Tampa that started at 6 o'clock p.m., and that is through the duration of the storm. That is for the city of Tampa. The mayor has made it very clear that they do not want people out here because things are falling. Things can start falling. For the most part, I see palm fronds. Nothing huge has fallen down where I am here in downtown Tampa. But we also know that this is just the beginning of it for us. We're going to see a lot more. The winds are going to pick up. The rain is going to pick up here. We're going to see more of that here. And even if we did get less of a hit than we thought we might get, it's still going to be very serious out here. It's nothing to play with. And that wind can catch you off guard, and it really does blow you around. It's no joke. So, unfortunately, I'm seeing people out here still. But it does seem like most people here in Tampa have heeded the warnings and have stayed away from this area right now.
All right, Stephanie Elam. Stephanie, be safe down in Tampa. I want to get to Karen McGinnis now. Karen is in the CNN's Weather Center, and she joins us now. So give us a latest.
Life is about moments. If you fight, I fight. If I
several hours, Don, this is when we're going to see perhaps the worst impact right across Tampa. Its position puts it about 35 miles to the southeast of Tampa. This is a water vapor image. And what I noticed most strikingly is that this southwestern edge has really got a little bit more dry air into it. That's because it's not sitting out over the open waters anymore. It doesn't have anything that's going to fuel the system anymore once it has made landfall now. But here's the worst part is as Irma continues to trek towards the north, we're going to start to see Tampa on the backside of this so that water starts coming in. What do we estimate? Well, original estimates were maybe 5 to 10 feet. That was about 24 hours ago, but now we're looking at a different animal. As the wind comes back around, that's going to draw that water into that Tampa Bay, maybe between 1 and 3 feet. It's still substantial. It may not be what we were looking at 24 hours ago, but still a kind of a superlative amount if you consider that most of these homes, these beautiful, lovely homes that have been built on these canals and through these bays are going to be very vulnerable. Then what will happen? This transitions just from to the east of Tampa up towards Gainesville, Florida, perhaps as a Category 1. So it still has legs even as we go into Monday early morning. In southern Georgia, it is going to be the drenching rainfall that would be very problematic, but not just in South Georgia, also some coastal areas of South Carolina, significant rainfall expected here. Don't be surprised if some of these rainfall amounts amount to 10, 15 inches, certainly possible. All right, this is the wind forecast. There you can see the winds right now offshore Tampa, offshore some of these other coastal communities to the north of Tampa. But once you're on the backside of this, that's when we've got these real problems. And we're going to see that water start to rush in. Then it transitions to the north. How long will this last? It could be over the next 3 to 5 hours, we could see that. It's going to be very dramatic. And then we start to see this transition more towards the north. So even into Atlanta, some gusty winds. We're going to see perhaps down trees and power lines. Already in Florida, Don, they're saying about 3.5 million customers without power. The estimate on that is about half of the customers that Florida Power and Light has. So when they go in to do the restoration and do the restructuring of all of the power grid that is necessary there, that is going to be a huge undertaking. And that's just one element of what we're seeing with Irma. It's going to be the electrical grid. It's going to be the rebuilding of homes. It is going to be different infrastructures that perhaps over time have been neglected. But it has taken Irma to really meet its match in the state of Florida when it made landfall at Marco Island around 3:30 in the afternoon. We had some wind gusts there reported at 140 miles an hour. So, Don, Irma continues to make its trek more towards the north. It is just now about 35 miles to the southeast of Tampa.
Karen, I got to ask you, so listen, we always talk about the flooding and the storm surge. Where are the storm surge concerns right now?
It is all in this area from right around Fort Myers, Florida. There you can start to see some of these bands already coming ashore. That's because they're on the south side of the system. Still on Tampa, for Tampa, it's still going out. So in the next couple of hours, as Irma transitions more towards the north, then Tampa is going to be on the backside of this, and that water is going to start rushing into some of those bays, even to the north of Tampa. And right now, Fort Myers is seeing that as well. Maybe 1 to 3 feet storm surge is what we are expecting. But I wouldn't diminish that. Those don't sound like staggering numbers, but we know for the financial district down in Miami, they had essentially the flooded areas due to the storm surge. Now, they did have a lot of rainfall there as well, but this storm surge is so destructive. And I know a lot of folks that they look at Tampa Bay or some of those other canals and see the water rush out, when in fact, in the next couple of hours, that water is going to be being pushed in again.
Karen McGinnis, thank you very much. Appreciate that. Hurricane Irma spreading destruction across Florida. Bren Gingras in Orlando for us right now. Bren, looks like you're getting blown around there.
Yeah, Don. I mean, we were told that the beginning of the worst for Orlando was going to hit around midnight, and Irma really arrived on time. It's really eerie, I got to tell you, because we're in downtown Orlando, and so we have a lot of tall buildings, which creates a lot of alleyways for this wind to travel through, and I'm standing in one, and all I can tell you is that I will hear a whole sheet of water coming down from this direction, and then next thing I know, I'm getting hit by it. It's almost like if you were standing in the ocean and you see a big wave coming and you turn your back to it and you get knocked over. Certainly, this isn't the most as strong as a wave would be, but it's a lot of water that just comes gushing at us, and I know we're expecting to get a lot worse. In this direction, we're being blocked by our hotel building, but in this direction, I can tell you what I'm seeing is just the trees sort of bending over. The wind tunnel is extremely bad over there, and what's even worse, it's an eerie sound. We keep hearing these little, like almost car crashing sounds, and that is what we're hearing. These light posts with these sort of globes around them, they keep coming and crashing those glass onto the concrete. So we've been hearing it one after another, and it just sounds like mini car crashes happening on the street. But yeah, we're certainly getting a lot of wind, and we've been paying attention to this light post right here because that has been really shaking. But as you've been talking all throughout your newscast, Don, there's a lot of projectiles, as particularly here to my behind me to my right, where there's an entire construction site. We've got 2 cranes and tons of supplies. So as one person told me, which I really didn't want to hear this, but as one person told me, you know, even a nail that isn't tied down at a construction site can turn into a bullet. And it's absolutely right. With these kind of wind gusts, you never know what can come flying at a home or a person. And of course, at this hour, a lot of people inside safely, probably, hopefully getting some sleep because it's not going to stop for another few hours, Don.
That is a very wise person. It's been concerning me all day watching you guys stand out there. Thank you, Bren. Be safe. I appreciate it. Sarah Seidner now, Daytona Beach. Sarah, you're in the East Coast, on the East Coast of Florida. What are you dealing with?
Let me just tell you, Don, that basically what's happening, and we apologize, the light's going off and on. There's a lot of wind and a lot of rain that is affecting our equipment as it is affecting this whole entire street. This is A1A. We are on the backside of a huge concrete hotel that is hurricane rated. And so we have some protection, but it is still blowing us around. Now, this is a squall. We are told by CNN meteorologists that this actually is about 60 to 70 miles per hour. That's the heaviest that we've seen it over the past few hours. We're talking about tropical storm force winds that are blowing around. But remember that just 5 miles more per hour is a Category 1 hurricane winds. And so what you're seeing right now is really quite a bit of blowing that's coming straight down A1A. Also, what we're also seeing is a lot of projectiles that you've been hearing from everyone. That's the danger here. There are things like the tops, the things that cover the lights are flying around. We're seeing the tops of trash cans flying around. And this wind, I am not a small woman, as you know, Dawn. I'm a chunky girl, and it is blowing me around when the gusts come really, really hard. So this is nothing to play around with. Everyone has been told that over and over and over again, that you really have to respect this wind. The reason why we are out here is because this is our job. We choose to do this, and we get paid to do this. But we are here to be eyes for you, the witnesses for you, so that you folks at home that are worrying about your homes, that are worrying about your businesses, that are worrying about your family that is in the way of the storm, you can see what is going street to street where we are, but you don't have to put yourself or your family in danger. This is an incredibly strong storm, and we are 200 plus, about 225 miles from the eye of the storm. So we're nowhere near the eye, and yet we are seeing these incredible winds. We're also on the East Coast while the storm eye is on the West Coast, Dawn.
Thank you, Sarah Seidner. You're a beautiful woman, no matter what size you are, and there's nothing wrong with having a little curve. Thank you, Sarah. Be safe out there. I appreciate it. When we come back, Irma pounding Florida from coast to coast with violent winds and torrential rains as it moves north.
Get some power. They know that it's hot and musky and dark in those places, but